Hello, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be having a little look at some changes that I've made to my master material for all of my props and, buildings, rocks, things that aren't foliage, basically. Now, the reason that I've been working on this for a week or two now is because we use some assets from the marketplace in our project, and all of these assets tend to have completely different ways that the materials are set up, and it can get very frustrating to, kind of work with and maintain and make changes to. So the main benefit of this method that I'm about to show you is that it reduces draw calls. We all know that draw calls are demonic. It's also a lot easier to make swatches for things, so like alternate color schemes and all that kind of stuff. And, it's consistent, so you don't have to be like, oh, this asset was, using a texture, like a pre-made texture. So let's dive straight into it and start with like a little overview of how this material system works. So basically what it is a material ID system. So it's one material that has multiple different, material subslots in it. So for example, this asset here looks fantastic, nothing wrong with it. You can see that it has 11 material slots. So this is going to be 11 extra draw calls, and if I wanted to change the color of this entire thing, I would have to change each of these materials, one by one, so that, if I wanted this to be, I don't know, made of wood or something, or some other color, I would have to do that all manually, go to that one, change that to wood, and then go to this one, and change that one to, chain, or whatever I needed it to be. And it just gets really annoying really fast, especially if you just want to, do something really quickly. So this is probably the most common thing that you'll see on the marketplace, if you're dealing with someone else's assets, because this is how you would export it straight from Blender. In Blender, you texture everything, you put everything together. It all has different material slots because, that's just how you do it in Blender. And then you would just export that, you'd chuck it on the marketplace, or whatever. Obviously, you'd do a little bit more before that. But, this is just stock standard, easiest way to do it. And that's not to say there's anything wrong with this. It does have some upsides, like if I only wanted to change one section of this, instead of this brick texture, we want to use like this one or something, then I can just do that. But the downside is it's a lot of extra draw calls, and if you wanted to just, change this to be something else, like everything to be something else, it's a big pain in the ass. If you're like me, you like to squeeze as much juice out of, the GPU as possible, so that you leave room to do some wacky shit, further down the line if you need to. So if we go to this one here, and we click on it, you can see that it is a single material slot. And if, for example, we wanted to change this to, a different, theme or something, or a different swatch, as I'd call it, we can just drag it on and everything, changes to whatever this material is. So, if we wanted our walls to be a different color, maybe they're like a sandy, stony color, and, we wanted everything else to be that color as well. Okay, so now if we've got this one here, and, we wanted to change this different asset to match those colors, we just drag this on there, and bam, it's all done, it's all sorted. We can, just quickly interchange between these two, types of, these two styles, I guess. It basically makes it a lot easier for your team to do what they need to do, basically. So the first thing that we will do is we will dive into the actual material, and we will observe how it functions. So all of this stuff over here is just extra effects and whatnot. But this is where the meat and potatoes are. This is where the actual, atlasing happens. It does look a bit intimidating because, there's so many like parameters and stuff, but if we dig into here, each of these, I guess we'll call them material subslots, can be turned on and off per, material. So the best way to explain what is going on here, is to just copy this, and we're going to make a new material. And let's get our text coordinates. Okay, so let's just say for this example we have eight maximum slots. This number can be as high as you want it to be, but keep in mind you will have to actually rig it up that way, and it can just be a fucking pain in the ass, because then in your material instance you'll have all of these switches, and it can just get annoying. So I've gone with 16. 16 is plenty. What are you going to be making that has more than 16 textures or colors or whatever in it? And then this bit here, this is just what color or what texture it is that we're putting. Actually, you know what? Let's use a texture. Let's get a picture of my face, and that's going to go into there. Okay, so this is our, I call it an atlasing function, I guess. And you can see that we take the texture coordinates, so the UV space, and we are only concerned with one direction of it, being the red direction or the U direction. Then we're going to multiply it by the number of slots that we want. You can always change it later on, but you will have to kind of reformat your existing assets if you do that. So requires a little bit of, rubbing some brain cells together. So to start off, this is what our UV space looks like. 0 over here, 1 over here. Then what we do is we multiply it by the number of slots and then floor that. We put this into here. Now you can see that if I was to actually divide this so we can visualize what it's really doing. Let's divide this by 7, I believe. Then you can see that it's actually quantizing this space into, sections rather than it being a smooth gradient. Without the divide here, you can't really see it. Actually, you could see it if we put it into the emissive. If we put it into the emissive, we might be able to see it. Okay, you can kind of see what's going on. Not very well though, but basically these white parts over here are exceeding the value of 1, which is why they just looked white when we looked at it like this. And then by subtracting an integer from that, we kind of scroll through it. But once we absolute this, then these parts become white. Now the reason that side becomes white is because these values here are actually negative, to the left of this middle point. They're negative values, which obviously don't appear, in rendering. What does a negative luminosity value look like, huh? Punk, you tell me. And then we 1 minus this. And so what we're left with is a white line that we can, move around. Now, this doesn't have to just be a white line. This can be, well, it can literally be anything, because we have a 0 value here and a 1 value here. And if you know about zeros and ones, that's where the multiply node can really come in handy. So we're going to take this texture of my ugly face, and we're going to multiply it by the resulting thing. And as you can see, now it is revealing, the texture underneath. Up to this point, kind of useless, but now what we do, this is where the fun happens. We take this first part and we're going to copy this, and we're going to put 1 in this bit, and we're going to put 2 in this bit, and we're going to put 3 in this bit. We'll say that. We're going to put this into all of here, and then we can multiply each of these individual thingos by a different color or a different texture or, you know, a different parameter value or something like that. So let's just grab some random colors. Now, how do we get all these to appear at once? Well, because all the values either side of each strip are 0, we can just add them all together, because 0 plus anything doesn't change it. So we can just add all these together, chuck them into the base color, and now you can see we've got our texture here in slot 1. We've got some random ass colors, you know, here, and here, and that's basically how this, you know, kind of works in theory. But you can see that's exactly what I'm doing here. However, I add a switch to the end of each of these, with, you know, the input in the true, and then in the false, just a constant 0, and that'll get optimized out when the material instance recompiles itself. And then we add all them together, and then we pop them out here. So now that we know how that atlasing function works, how do we actually use it in a meaningful way? Because like, why would we want this? Why would we want to be doing this? It looks dumb as hell. Well, I guess the more, complex part of this method comes when we use multiple UV channels to kind of create like an AND function. I think the best way to think of it is, let's imagine this circle is our object that we're texturing, and all of our textures or our colors or whatever, they are all overlapped on each other. So all layers exist simultaneously in the same place. That sounds a bit fucking quantum. But the, you know, the little secondary UV map, so, you know, let's just say this is this color and this is that color. Oh, shit. Let's say this object is split up into 4 parts, right? Let's just imagine we wanted them all to be different colors, have different textures. So all of the textures exist in the same place at once, but with the secondary UV map, we say, okay, well, we're going to put you up here. Therefore, you're only going to show this orange texture and this orange color or whatever it is. And this one corresponds to, you know, we put it up here on the UV map, so it's only going to reveal the blue texture and the blue color. And, you know, same with the green and the red. So what we'll do is we'll grab these 12 big chunky assets. All of these have a bunch of, you know, materials each. We're going to right click. We're going to bulk export. One thing to keep in mind when you're reformatting assets like this, you will need to just make sure that they have the right material on them, because if you're doing it in bulk, just like make sure that, you know, anything that's using wood or something within a set of, you know, assets has the same material, because we need to use the material name in order to like efficiently like group them all together. You'll see when we do it. So we're going to open up Blender. We're just going to make a new session. We're going to kill the default cube. Sorry, mate. So let's import all of the things we just exported. And now we have a bunch of our sets. They're ready to get some work done to them. So the first thing we're going to do, if we go to the material properties tab here, we can see that these materials here have, you know, stone wall 01. Cool. This one has stone wall 01 as well. But they all have these numbers at the end of them, which means that we can't just select one and like select all verts that have that material, because they're all separate materials. So we need to enable an add-on or a plugin called Material Utilities. I'm pretty sure this came with Blender. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's stock with Blender, but you just need to go Edit, Preferences, and then look it up and enable it. It's called Material Utilities, and what we're going to do is select all of these, right-click them, go to Material Utilities, and go to Specials, and merge base names. And then we're going to go auto rename / replace, hit OK. And now you can see over here, all of these have those suffixes removed. So they're all actually using the same materials. So then what we're going to do is we're going to select all these. We're going to go to the shading mode up the top. We're going to have them all selected. We're going to hit tab to go to edit mode. So now we're like selecting, you know, all the stuff. We're going to click the number 3 to go to face select mode. And now you can see whenever we click on something, so if I just put this here, whenever we click on a different material, it's going to show it here, which is great. Now, because we're in multi-edit mode, so we have multiple objects selected, but we're in edit mode with all of them, you know, at once, we can click on wall here and then go to slot 1. We can go select, and it's going to select the wall material across every object in the scene. Wow. Okay, so now what are we actually going to do with this? Well, we can go to UV editing mode. We're going to go to the UV maps section. And you can see that there is a UV map 0 here. So this corresponds to the actual texturing of the object. You can just leave this exactly how it is. If you're, you know, reformatting someone else's asset, then just leave it. If you're creating your own assets, then this UV channel is just, you know, do it, texture it how you'd normally texture it. Don't worry about anything. However, the map that we're interested in, it kind of depends. If you're using static lighting, you'll need to leave this one here, the light map UV. I'm using all dynamic lighting, so I usually use this one in order to do what we're about to do. But you could also just create a new UV map, UV channel, whatever you want to call it. Now, another add-on that you will want that's going to save you a billion hours of time is called Batch UV Tools. This one right here by a user named Mad Llama. And it's called Batch UV Operations, Blender Multiple UV Object Helper UV, blah, 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 blah. And essentially all it does is adds this sync active map, delete active map, and set active render map so that you can select the same UV channel across multiple objects, because Blender can't do that by default for whatever fucking reason. So you'll need that plugin just to get these buttons here. They are super useful. I highly recommend just getting it anyway. And so what we're going to do in this case is select our light map UV, which is an unused UV channel if you're using all dynamic lighting. Or in this case, let's actually just create a new one called, let's just call this material map, right? Then with this one selected, we're going to click sync active map. And if the other objects didn't have that created already, it will create it for them and select that as the active one. So let's hit A to select them all again. Back to tab. Now we have this extra UV channel selected. And what we're going to do is up here, we're going to hit sync UV selection. And now we have all of the wall material thingos selected. And now what we do is we collapse them down to a point. Doesn't have to be perfect. And we're going to put it, let's just put it up here for now. You will need to create a texture to use as like a reference. And I'm going to import this grid that I just made in Paint or something, I think. And it's just got some stripes with numbers on it. And that's just to know where I'm putting things. So, you know, make your own. I'm sure you can do it. I'll give you a pat on the back if you do it yourself. Basically, all we have to do now is go through all of the, you know, material types. I'll just do a couple here. Let's, you know, do the bricks. Go to slot, select. We get them all. We go back to UV mode. We get these. We scale them all down to a point. We move it to, you know, the second channel or whatever. Let's just do one more for fun. We'll get the columns, I guess, and select, and we go to UV editing, scale them down. You can press just S and then 0, and it'll get scaled to 0, so it'll get scaled to an absolute point. But that can kind of get a bit funky because then you can't see it if you wanted to just select it out of nowhere. So what we're going to do here, just imagine we did the rest of these. I just can't be bothered. We're going to just select the ones that we've done already. Control I to invert. We're just going to move these, just tell them to fuck off, basically. And we're going to move these down. Now, in essence, all we've done here is created a material ID map using a secondary UV channel. A lot of other methods would use like vertex color to do something like this, or a lot of other methods. These fucking birds, I swear. A lot of other methods would use vertex color to do this kind of thing. Like, you know, they'd either have different colors, like completely different colors, and then they'd like do some sort of I think it's like a distance function or something between like this and that, and if it's 0 then you know that it's the thing, and the blah blah blah. That can just get a little bit dicey because like floating point errors and whatever. Another way that it could be done is with like a grayscale vertex color value, where like essentially what you'd do is exactly this, except instead of using a UV channel, you would say, okay, well this one is color 0, and this one's 0.1, and this one's 0.2. The downside of that is that it's kind of hard to work with like on a larger scale. You know, this way we can actually like visually see, okay, well I can just select these and now I've got the columns, and you know, if I've put them in the wrong place, I can just grab these and say, oh, actually no, I wanted these in slot number 6, and now they're in slot number 6, and that kind of thing. So it's just a lot easier to kind of visualize and, you know, fix up and swap things around if they need to. The other thing is using vertex color. Vertex color is very sacred. You know, you only get 4 floats of vertex color, and then you're done. And, you know, vertex paint in engine and stuff can be really useful, so you want to save all the channels that you can to, you know, do all these extra vertex color-based effects. And the other cool thing is that I've seen people working on plugins for runtime vertex color painting, which like, that's kind of just why I prefer this method over the other methods. So before we put these back into Unreal, there's just one leftover problem, and that is that they still have all of these different material slots on them, and we just want to delete them all as quickly as possible because we hate material slots. So what we're going to do, we select them all, we right click, assign material, and just get any material, click it, and that should have just done it. Why did you not? There we go. Okay, well apparently I just had to do it a couple of times for it to frickin' work. Okay, no, wait, no, hold on. Why are you being naughty? Assign material. Alright, so apparently that function isn't perfect, but let's just double check that they all have a single material. Okay, so now they all just have one material. It's just a quick way, rather than go through and delete them all individually, it's just a pain in the ass. We can just do it on batch like that. Okay, so now what we need to do is we need to export these back to Unreal. So, in order to get these back into Unreal, we go File, Export, FBX. And we're going to hit Mesh and Selected Objects Only, and we can just export them. Cool, that's going to do its thing. The downside of exporting it this way is that it's going to export it as one file that then gets imported into Unreal as multiple objects. There are some scripts that allow you to bulk export objects as like individual files, which I much prefer. So I will link a script in the description that allows you to batch export things. It's just a Python script. You run it once, and then the option just appears in the, you know, file export options. And then we're just going to drag this in. Just make sure that combine meshes is unticked. All right, so now we have our assets imported. And you can see that they only have one material slot now. Fantastic. So let's just grab some of these out, and we will grab our test material and just chuck that on them. Now, this looks wacky as hell right now. Remember that we only half did these assets as well. So number of slots, we had 16 because we were using my 16 grid. And we just did the first 3 or 4 slots, I can't remember. Now, the texture Coord has to match the UV channel that we're using to do this thing. So in our case, we had the textures UV stuff, then we had the light map UV, and then we had our material map. So this will be number 2 because 0, 1, 2. So if we hit save now, then you can see that we've created a monstrosity, but it is a consistent monstrosity. So the walls are all my ugly face, the bricks are all red, and the columns are all blue, which is really cool. If we went into here, let's just say, let's get the wall normal map, and let's just make this like a gray material or whatever. And then let's get our bricks 01 normal map. We're going to put that into number 2 or whatever it was there, I think. And then we'll get our columns normal map, put that into there. And then we're going to put this into the normal slot. Totally righteous, bro. So this is where it kind of gets a little bit confusing. So just to kind of explain again what's going on here with this little kind of mock-up example, is we're using texture coordinate 2, and we're basically kind of cross-referencing that with texture coordinate 0. And that's how we end up with, you know, these different thingos. If we wanted to do, you know, different colors for each of these textures, in this mock-up example, we could just get another multiply per thingo and plug these in 1, 2, and 3, and then chuck this in there. This can be, the color of the wall can be, I don't know, gray, blue. Color of the bricks can be like a lighter gray, blue, and the color of the columns can be, I don't know, red. And then we add these all together, so we add the result. And we put that into the base color. And now you can see that's basically exactly what we expected. Now the other bits that we didn't bother doing in this example, they're going to be black, because they're kind of outside of the, you know, they're outside of this part. But that's fine. So it's kind of like using one of the channels as like a key that unlocks, or, you know, only opens one of the textures or the colors or that kind of thing. That's how the UV atlasing, function blending, material map, material ID bullshit works. How do we make it usable? How do we make it easy to use? How do we make it, you know, simple? Before we go any further, let's just take a big, deep breath, because there's a lot of shit going on. Just... Okay, I'm ready. So, in the master material that I use, you can just ignore these 2 other color thingos. Yours might just be, you know, a color or like an albedo texture slot and a normal map slot or a whatever. The main thing is that we've turned this into a function that can get used multiple times. Now, this looks like a lot of stuff going on. Keep in mind that the compiler will turn this into like a single loop. Like all of this repeated code will just get optimized into a loop. So in essence, all we have to do is make this function, which I will try and put in a paste bin. I don't know if it'll really work, but we can try. Here it is just left on screen for a little bit if you wanted to copy this manually, you know, if you've got issues. But essentially then all you do is just set up your parameters. These could be textures, or they could just be colors like I use in my game. Or, you know, down here they're normal maps, which are just textures again. And so then what you do is, yeah, you just set up your parameters, or your, you know, your vector parameters. You plug them in, you do your thing. Maybe they're texture parameters. You plug them in, whatever. And then inside this, there are switches that say, you know, use material slot 1, use 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, blah, blah, blah. Now, one thing to keep in mind if you are going to use this kind of system, you can kind of do it willy-nilly and just, like, you know, put things wherever you want and that kind of stuff. But I've found that actually, like, kind of reserving a spot for each material type can go a long way. So in this little document here, I've got, you know, where things go. So the wall always goes in slot 1, you know, stone wall. The floors go in that one, the wood goes in this one, the roof goes in there. These ones can be changed around as we need and blah, blah, blah. You kind of get the point. But the benefit of this is that we can use material instance inheritance to just make it easier to do stuff. So what I've opted to do is to create a submaster material. So this is a child of the, you know, the mega material, or the, you know, the master material. And it uses all 16 material slots, and they all have a color assigned to them, you know, like a default color. And it also has all of the textures assigned to it. Now, this material itself doesn't actually get used anywhere, but then what I do is go to, let's say like these floors, for example. They have their own floors material instance, which is a child of the submaster. So if you weren't aware already, you can right-click a material instance and create a material instance of that material instance. So it's kind of like blueprint inheritance or just class inheritance in general, except with shaders. And so, you know, if I just put this on there, then you can see, you know, it has the ground blending properties that are by default, which I've, you know, changed for the floors. But if we look at the optimization view mode, you can see that when we have all of the textures and all the parameters at once, it's less performant than, you know, these ones over here, which have less. Even though they look the exact same, this one's still actually sampling all of those textures. So what we do with this sub-material is we just go through and we disable all of the, you know, the slots that we're not using, rather than have them all disabled and then enable the ones we're using. We want to start with them all enabled and then disable the ones we're not using. So we get rid of wall, we get rid of like column 2, arch 1, arch 2. I've lost track of whatever the other ones were. We can basically just go through until a black color appears. So there we go. So we need that one. Do we need this one? Nope. Do we need this one? Nope. Do we need this one? Yes. So we're going to put that back. Sometimes it doesn't turn back on properly, but yeah. So now we've created a child material of that big material at the start, which is now more optimal. So, you know, it's a lighter green than before. Wow, I like it. But the main reason that we do this is because I can just go to that submaster material and say, oh, actually, I wanted the walls to be bright orange, right? And now literally everything that inherits from that submaster material has orange walls now. Ain't that cool? So, you know, by kind of being smart with the material inheritance, you can save a lot of time and a lot of effort, and, you know, just kind of be more efficient with how we you know, deal with coloring things and whatnot. So even though, you know, these floors here, and, you know, these walls here and these prefabs here and these wood bits here, even though they all use different materials, like different material instances, they all inherit from the one submaster material. So that's why it's a good idea to kind of, for like a set of objects, so for example, all of these castle assets that I'm using, it's good to have like a game plan before you start dicking with it a bit. The last thing that I will show you guys is just some like extra little switches that I have in there that make this kind of a bit easier. So I've got like a switch here that says use one texture for all slots. Now this can come in handy for assets that have like a, you know, like a single atlas thing. So like, for example, this market cover asset has, you know, it's got like the cloth texture here, but then it's also got like the wood textures here, and they're all in this one texture. However, I want them to have different colors. I want the, you know, these to be able to have a different color to the wood and stuff. So instead of going through this and being like, okay, well, you know, slot number 1 needs this texture and slot number 2 needs this same texture and slot number 3 needs this same texture again. It's just one texture for the whole thing, and then the colors can be changed individually. So that's use one texture for all slots, or use one normal map for all slots. There is another switch called use one material with no atlas, which is, it basically just disables everything in the material. It adjusts the number of segments to be 0, so that even if, you know, like if an asset is just like a single texture thing, like for example this shelf, you know, it just uses this one texture and it only needs one color, doesn't need like multiple color slots or whatever. So this isn't an asset that I have to move into Blender and readjust all the UVs and that kind of stuff. And, you know, if we actually go and look at the UV map of this asset, then we can see that UV channel 0, this is its texture thing. UV channel 1 is just its light map UVs. Like, I haven't touched this asset. So that's what that use one material with no atlas switch is for. Otherwise, it would just kind of break, because it would be using the texture atlas when it doesn't actually need to. If something doesn't need multiple material slots, you can just have a switch that says, okay, let's just treat this like a regular old asset, and it'll still just use, you know, color 1 and texture 1 and that kind of thing. So that's another nice switch to have there. But yeah, that's kind of all there really is to it. I'll start editing this video, and if there's something that I haven't explained, I'll go back and film it, you know, Charlie from the future, blah, blah, blah. Pretty sure that's it. I mean, we even went through and made a mock-up material. We put an asset into Blender. We adjusted them all. We put it back into Unreal. We splattered the texture on it, and it worked. So if you've made it this far into the video, then I'm sure that you've learned something. And if you have learned something, you know the rules. You need to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button and leave a nice comment or a nasty comment or whatever you want. It just helps get these videos out to more people, and the more people that know about it, you know, the better everyone's games and stuff are, and that kind of shit. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. If you do want to go one step further in supporting the game and the channel and the tutorials and all that good stuff, you can do so through our Patreon, which is linked below, for as little as $1 per month. And if you do need a hand with any of this stuff, join the Discord. You can DM me, but I rarely check my direct message, so you're probably better off pinging me in the Discord. But I guess with that, we say goodbye. Goodbye. Jesus fucking Christ. There goes 3 hours of my life that I'm not going to get back. Why did this take so fucking long to film?